Hey everybody. This morning I want to go through the install of the Ford Performance ProCal High Performance Programmer, Ford Performance part number M9603B23. This is for the 2.3 liter EcoBoost. I'm going to put it on my 2023 Bronco with manual transmission. So here's what comes in the box. You get the performance module. You get an OBD2 cable that plugs into the back of the module. You get a USB cable. You're going to use this to connect to a Windows PC to do some updates. And you also get this mount. I'll have a comment on that later. But first I want to talk a little bit about why I'm doing this, why I think it's going to be worthwhile. I'll do a before and after, like 0 to 60 road test, so that got some numbers to assess the results with, not just my seat of the pants kind of uncalibrated feel for things. With that, let's get to it.
So let's start with the performance graph, and this is Ford data. I have not done anything like put my truck on a dyno or anything, so let's just take these values at face value here. And for starters, a stock 2.3 liter engine, 300 horsepower, and 325 pound-feet of torque. Like a lot of you guys, I'm old enough to remember when, 100 horsepower per liter out of an engine was quite impressive. So for starters, the stock 2.3 I think is pretty impressive to get 300 horsepower and 325 pound-feet of torque. Now, I'm coming from, my last vehicle was a Ram 3500 with a Cummins inline 6 turbo diesel in it. It had peak torque at just 1600 RPM. And so from, an engine performance point of view, that type of engine, big diesel like that, with lots of torque at the low end is a completely different animal than what we've got here in a turbo boosted 2.3 liter. But still, I think right out of the box from the factory, these are pretty impressive numbers. But I want to point out a couple things here, and this is what compelled me to go with the Performance Cal. And for starters, I've added accessories that bring additional weight and wind resistance to my stock vehicle. I've got an ARB bumper, a Summit bumper with a winch up front. I've got a Trail Rack's roof rack with some lighting on it. I've got Rotopax jugs hanging off the side of the rack. And that's cost me a couple miles per gallon, I think, from what I've seen so far, even if I'm running premium fuel. When I look at this chart, I see something very interesting. The quote that people tend to focus on is, one, the jump in horsepower by adding the ProCal module. So we go from 300 horsepower to 330, additional 30 horsepower. And we go from 325 pounds peak torque to 385. So that's an additional 60 pounds of torque. So that's about an 18.4% torque gain at maximum torque RPM up here, 3,500 to 4,000 or so. It looks like the peak torque on the curve. What I found interesting and compelling about this graph, though, is down here at the bottom end where they don't give exact numbers, but we've got, I'm guessing, 225 pound-feet of torque on the stock engine, and it looks like about 100 pound-feet, maybe a little bit more with the addition of the ProCal module. So let's just say that the difference here is 100 pound-feet of torque. Looks like on the graph here without a finer scale that it's at least 100 pound-feet of torque, maybe a few extra over that, but let's just say it's 100 pound-feet. So that is a 44% torque gain at around 2000 RPM, and this is, I think, where you're going to feel it the most, accelerating from a stop and at lower RPM. And that's just what this engine needs, is some help here at the bottom end, because we know that small displacement turbo engines, they really don't hit their stride up here until you get the turbo spun up, you get into the boost, and you've got higher RPM. And I think everybody's had situations with this type of engine where if you mash your foot on it and your RPM is not sufficiently high enough, you've got that turbo lag and things can kind of feel pretty mushy. unless you're up here working in the higher RPM range where that turbo is really doing its thing and helping you out up there. But down here at the low end, I found that this greatest gap between the stock truck and the modified truck with the ProCal on it, I think this is exactly what I would look for to get a little better performance out of this engine, maybe improve drivability, and hopefully get some gas mileage back as well. So there was a YouTube review by Car and Driver. They reviewed the Bronco after staff had put like 40,000 miles on it. They did a whole little segment on the adding the performance cal to manual transmission 2.3 liter, and it sounded pretty favorable. They suggested they got maybe 2 miles per gallon additional back and some noticeable better performance. And I'll put a link to that review below, but that was the final thing for me that said, yeah, I think this is compelling enough to go ahead and spend the money and do this. So just a couple of other things to be aware of with the Performance Cal 2 is this is 50 state legal now, and I happen to reside in California, and there is a certification from the California Air Resources Board. Let's see, this was dated 26th of July 2024, so wasn't necessarily 50 state legal prior to July of 24. So if you do happen to live in California and you go to get your vehicle smogged, you should be able to produce this letter stating that you've got an exemption for this piece of equipment and shouldn't have to do anything additional, take the tune off or anything like that to go and get your required smog certifications. One other thing I noted about the Performance Cal is I saw a reference that they had removed the rev matching feature that you would get with the module. And I'm not sure why they would do that. If I were to speculate, it might be because of the relatively close ratios of the 6 forward speeds, not counting the crawler gear. Maybe they had some drivability issues with having the rev matching feature in the Performance Cal. I know, for example, if I'm on the interstate at a highway speed and I'm getting to an off-ramp and I'm in 6th gear, a lot of times I will drop down from 6th directly to 4th, slip it into 4th as I'm coming in the exit ramp, just because that feels better to me as far as just decelerating, having some compression braking, and not necessarily downshifting through all the gears in sequence. So I don't know what the rev feature would do if you skip gears on a downshift like that, but I'm guessing that they probably saw some issues. And then that is why they pulled the rev matching feature out of the ProCal. So when I first read that, I was a little disappointed. It's like, hey, I want the rev matching, but after thinking about it a little bit, it's like no big deal, and perhaps better off without it. So let's discuss the install process, and I'm going to give just the basic steps. There's 5 pages of instructions you can download that has all the details on the process. So this is just an overview of the basic steps of what we're trying to do here to facilitate the installation. So first step, download the instructions. I'll put the link below. And then you need to register with Ford Performance if you haven't already. And in your box with the ProCal, you get a bright greenish yellow page that's got your voucher ID on it. And I would assume that they are pretty stringent on that because they don't want their software being pirated and freely distributed. So entering the voucher ID is the first step in the process. So now you need a Windows PC. Doesn't need to be a laptop. It doesn't need to be out in the Bronco. If you've got a desktop in the house, that should work just fine. But the first step is to download the ProCal software to your PC. Prepare your ProCal device for use. So it comes with no calibrations on it. When you plug it into your PC, the ProCal software can update it, make sure that you have the most recent code on it. After you're finished with that step, you're going to go out to the Bronco and save your stock calibration onto the ProCal. So here we're going to use the OBD2 cable, and we're just going to follow the steps to back up that stock calibration to the ProCal tool. And on that procedure, when you get to the point where it says turn ignition off for 3 seconds, that means you're done with that part of the process. Now, a couple of notes on that. They do suggest that you run a battery charger or battery tender on your battery, because you're going to have the ignition on for a while without running the engine, and they just want to make sure that you have high enough voltage that nothing's going to go wrong. And there's all kinds of warnings around the instructions about following the procedure exactly, not starting the engine at the wrong time, because you have some risk. You could brick the ProCal tool or maybe even your ECU on the truck, and certainly we don't want to do that. So take your time, follow the directions very carefully, and the install should go just fine. So once we have the stock calibration loaded onto the ProCal from the truck, we're going to come back to our PC. We're going to back up that stock calibration using the ProCal software, and then we'll be able to download the Performance Cal onto the ProCal tool. So now on the ProCal tool, when you look at the calibrations it has, you should see that it has a stock calibration and a performance calibration. Now we're going to go back out to the truck with the OBD2 cable, and we're going to install the Performance Cal onto the Bronco. When you get to the point where it says finished, key off for 3 seconds, you are done with the process at that point. So that's an overview of how the whole install process works. I'm going to go ahead and do a 0 to 60 run to get a before number on the 0 to 60, and I don't do a lot of drag racing myself, and I've got a lot of heavy accessories on the vehicle, so my 0 to 60 times nowhere near some of the best 0 to 60 times you see with a stock vehicle. It's just not the kind of thing that I do that often. So what I'm really looking for though is consistency in the way I drive. And if I'm accelerating aggressively 0 to 60, if I do it the same before and after, I should get some relative performance other than just my gut feel for whether I sense that there's an improvement after installing Performance Cal or not. So just to try to put some numbers on it, and please don't laugh too hard at my slow 0 to 60 times, but what I'm looking for here is just consistency of my driving before and after.
So now we're on to page 2 instructions, which this is the first time that we're going to connect the ProCal tool to the vehicle. First step is to turn the ignition on. Do not start the engine. Now that it's on, we're going to take the OBD2. We've got the jack plugged into the back. We're going to plug in the OBD2 down here to the OBD2 port. And the ProCal tool loads up. I'm going to edit a bunch of this out because there's going to be a lot of time waiting for things like right now where it says loading. I don't know how long it's going to take. We don't need to sit here and watch this whole thing. We'll just follow the directions. We've got a license agreement. We're going to go to programming. And the whole idea with this step is we're going to save our stock calibration. Okay, it says key off for 3 seconds. So now I'm back in the Bronco with the ProCal. I've plugged it into the OBD2 port. I'm turning the ignition on. And they really emphasize you do not want to have the engine on at this point. You just want the key in the run position. Okay, so ProCal has booted up. I'm going to select the programming option. I should see, again, here we have another warning, turn ignition on, do not start. I'm going to continue searching the database. Now when I hit Performance Cal, I see that I've got a file for Performance Cal. Continue with file Performance Cal. Yes, continue. Writing ECU. Okay, so the magic is happening as we speak.
911 assist is not operational. Please visit your dealer.
Okay, writing block 1 of 6. There's a little progress bar down here. Looks like a tire track laying rubber. Cute. This might be a good time to have fingers crossed. Okay, we skipped ahead to block 2. Went pretty quick. Now we're writing block 3 of 6. Writing block 5. Writing block 6. Things are booting back up. Says clearing codes, finished, key off for 3 seconds. Okay, that key off for 3 seconds, supposedly the end of the procedure.
So let's wrap this up with some final impressions. Just taking another look at this curve and the area under this curve here, especially this torque curve where you get the benefit at the lower RPMs. I think you can definitely feel that. And you saw my 0 to 60 times. I shaved off 1.59, almost 1.6 seconds from that, about 12.9, almost 13% improvement in that acceleration. And I think just seat of the pants feel, yeah, you can feel this thing. You've definitely got some more power, and especially down low. Where I really notice it is like in second gear. You're going around a slow corner or making a turn, and second gear has not felt quite low enough, and it's been kind of a annoying thing sometimes to shift down to first gear just to go around a corner. So now my second gear feels much improved and feel like I've got adequate torque power to do that low speed kind of turn like that. So if you've put one of these on, let me know in the comments. How's it been for you? How do you like it? Did you get some mile per gallon improvement? I haven't been through the first full tank, just my instant average readings. I'm thinking I may indeed have maybe 1 to 2 mile per gallon improvement. Haven't been on a long trip yet, so certainly see it then, but it looks like I am getting at least a little bit of mileage improvement. So just a couple more comments. The mount that comes with it, it won't attach to your dash. Some of the phone mounts these days have a gummy base to them and will attach to that textured dash. So it does have to attach to your windshield. But that brought up another whole question for me, and that is when I first started looking at this thing, I did not realize that you don't need to leave this thing plugged in all the time to your OBD2 port. And yes, you've got some interesting features you can get through with the menus and such, some data logging capabilities. You can look at some sensors and things like that. You can certainly use it to adjust for change in tire size, and even things like if you wanted to upgrade your steering in the front to the more heavy-duty Raptor style steering unit, you can do that and make the adjustment using the ProCal tool. So it's great for that, but I just don't know that I need to leave it plugged in all the time. It's certainly not a device that you can do some finger poking around and change your calibration on your ECU, or that seems unlikely that you could do that accidentally, but I just don't see a use to having it left plugged in all the time. And for that, I actually have another device. I got one of these OBD Link MX Plus Bluetooth OBD readers, and I'm pretty impressed with this as a tool and leave it plugged in all the time. It's not the cheapest OBD reader, but I do like it. And it works with your phone, of course, through Bluetooth, and it gives you some pretty whizzy gauges and stuff. You can look at boost and sensors and acceleration. You can do your speed timing and such with that if you want. So that might be another video to go through that device. But I think I would rather just leave my OBD2 MX Plus plugged in all the time and carry the Ford ProCal with me in the glove box with the cable, the OBD cable that comes with it, should I need to do anything with that. But I think I am not going to leave it plugged in all the time. And now, of course, this thing being 50 state legal, I really see no downside to putting this on your truck, and I would tend to agree with the car and driver commenters that said they only regret not putting this on sooner. So anyway, $825 list price. You can look online. You can find these for like $640 to $670 pretty easily. I think even with free shipping. So I think I'm going to be happy with this. But let me know in the comments if you've got one of these installed, you're thinking about getting it installed. And that's it for this video. We'll see you next time. If you like this content, if it's helpful, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much.